Go ahead and close your eyes if you can, relaxing the forehead, unclench your jaw, and relax your shoulders away from your ears. We're going to take a nice deep breath in through your nose, filling up your lungs all the way to the top. And exhale out the mouth, letting go. We're going to take another deep breath in together, this time really filling up your diaphragm, your lungs. And at the top of your breath, just holding for a moment before you exhale out the mouth, letting go. Go ahead and open up your eyes if you've closed them. And welcome back to Mindful Moves with me, your host, Daniela Jensch. We are going to be diving into a topic that I'm sure most of you are very familiar with, especially just having had the holiday season for many people. A lot of us have been around our families, around loved ones, and had a completely busy, jam-packed schedule. Some of us are still working. And so boundaries will be quite relevant in your life right now if you have been having a holiday and around a lot of people, because it plays and seeps into every relationship that we have. It plays a role and it matters, right? So I just want to speak about boundaries in a very basic way in today's episode. We're not going to dive into depth. We're just going to give you just enough to start this year off right, to start it with a fresh perspective on boundaries and how you can best look after yourself and the people you love around you. Because a lot of the time when people speak about boundaries, which I understand, it's a lot to do with you need to create these clear boundaries, these walls, and people need to fit in or leave. And while I can understand that a lot of us need clarity in our life and clarity around our relationships, I'm of the belief that boundaries can be lovingly explained, and I hope that we can give benefit of the doubt to the people that we love, because at the end of the day, you are not bringing up your boundaries, you are not trying to enforce your boundaries because you don't like the people around you. A lot of the time, it's because you haven't really ever stood up for yourself, so it can feel very new. And we want the people around us to stay in our lives. Otherwise, the conversation wouldn't be important enough to speak to about these things. Right? So let's speak a little bit about boundaries if you're not familiar. A boundary is a way you communicate your needs to the people that are around you, the people that you love, and communicate the way you would like to be loved and for the relationship to thrive. And why they feel sometimes sticky, or why they can sometimes feel hard, especially like I mentioned, if you just went through the holiday season and you've been around your family or your friends or co-workers the whole year. Maybe there are always people testing boundaries and testing limits. And it's not to say that they always have bad intentions. It's usually not the case. A lot of people are unaware of how their actions land for other people. And so I think these conversations are really important, because if we start normalizing sharing what works best for us, what makes us feel the most loved, and everybody did that for themselves, we would be way better off, because that means we would have open communication. That means that we would be honest. And this is the word that I want you to remember throughout the theme of this episode, is honesty. Because a boundary can feel really hard in times like this. It can feel hard when people are trying their best, but sometimes it just doesn't resonate with you. And I think they feel especially hard in the holiday time, because you have usually had a role that you've had in this life. You are usually the certain type of person. Maybe you were a child that did everything for everybody, always tried to help, was always the happy one, was always the one contributing. And maybe as you got older, you've changed role. Maybe you learned more about yourself. Maybe you realized that you need more time alone than you did when you were a kid. Maybe you realized that you don't function well on too many social interactions. Maybe you realized that you needed more social interactions. Maybe you needed more people around you. And these insights are so important, because that's why boundaries can feel difficult. especially when you're trying to communicate them, because often when we do communicate them, and we all do this, myself included, it is sometimes hard to not take it personal when someone shares something about themselves and their preferences, because we are all walking around with little wounds, and so sometimes we can feel hurt by that. Sometimes we can feel attacked by that. A lot of the time people do. And here I am to remind you that everybody is walking this earth and living their life from their internal world. It has nothing to do with you. It has never had anything to do with you. And so the first thing I'd like to just suggest when things feel sticky, if someone is communicating their boundaries to you, or you need to communicate your boundaries to someone else, when that defensiveness arises, whether it's in you or someone else, treat it with some care and some softness, because it's not coming from a bad place, it's coming from a hurt place. So if you can try and work on that, and when I say work on it, soften, enter with curiosity, enter with love, because that part of people is not a bad part, it is just a reactive part. And usually reaction is because there has been no care and love in that department. So I know that it can feel hard sometimes to communicate a boundary because of that defensive aspect, but we can't control what other people do. But what we can work on, because I think boundaries, you can't just be someone to try and enforce boundaries but not respect other people's. So it really is two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, we want to be able to learn how to communicate our boundaries in a loving, kind way. And on the other side, we need to be learning and practicing receiving that sort of feedback and taking away from that personal aspect of it. It is not about you. And I think humans, my personal belief, we all do this. We're selfish by nature. We are always thinking about ourselves. That's why whenever you feel really, really bad or down, I've always been of the belief that you need to do something for someone else, because you are so stuck in your little orbit. It's very easy to get stuck in there, that it's important to just step out and get that perspective change again. And so that's the first little part I'd like to remind you to do. If you're going to be someone to enforce boundaries, you need to be able to take that feedback. Because when you open a conversation around boundaries, it is very often that other people, maybe the other person in your relationship or friendship, has their own set. And so when you open this conversation, it's not one-sided. It's going to be both. It's going to be, which is a beautiful thing, because you are creating vulnerability. If you're able to share where and how you would like to be loved, they should feel the same. And you should be able to provide that good feeling for them as well. So that's why they feel hard. And equally, that's how we can approach them. Curiosity, don't expect to get it right the first time. And a very key aspect here when it comes to boundaries that I need everyone to take responsibility for is that a boundary is not the other person's job to uphold. It is your job. If you have a boundary and you are sharing that with the world, whoever it may be you're sharing it with, that's up to you to uphold. Because people, again, are all have their own lives, and they are busy and they are full and they have a lot on their plate. And so number one, they might not always remember. Number two, they might not always prioritize it, not by bad intention, but just because things happen, life happens, and sometimes we fall into old patterns. It takes a few repetitions to get things right. So we want to give people that as well. So point being that it's your job to uphold that boundary, which means you're going to have to maybe repeat yourself. Maybe it means you need to be patient. Maybe it means that you need to be working with them rather than against them. If it comes from a place of peace and love, you will be able to repeat that boundary with ease. And so make sure that your intention is peaceful. Make sure that your intention is pure. Remember, and I know that other people will come and say, I usually get messages after these type of episodes, I know that not everybody has the same relationships. I know that some are complex. We have people with no contact with some of the people in their lives, with family members. I need you to take everything with a pinch of salt. And I need you to also realize that I'm always going to focus on you and how you come across in the world. Because it doesn't matter what behavior other people have, we are always going to try and act in a beautiful way. We're going to work with integrity. We're going to work with class. We are going to work with the kindest part of ourselves, because that's what we want to be, right? I don't think we want to strive to be mean people. So we can't control what other people are doing. If your situation is severe, you will know that. I won't know that, but you will know, and you will know the best way to handle it. But I can guarantee you that if you are acting from a place of calm and peace, and you are able to look after yourself in a strong and classy way, you are going to be way better off, because you're going to feel at peace with your actions. When you lay your head on the pillow at night, you will be proud of the person you are. You will not be someone with malintent. And I think that that's a very big thing to think about when doing all of this. So, although boundaries will be difficult to enforce, sometimes sharing that will create disappointment. Other people might be disappointed in you. You need to brace yourself for that. They'll be disappointed. They might take it personal. They might be offended. They might try and spin it off and gaslight you. It really depends the severity of where you're at in the relationship. You need to be strong within yourself. That is the only advice that I would share, because it's the only advice that has worked for me. I have learned so much about myself, and as we all have through the years, experience really does matter, and you get to know yourself on a deeper level if you really listen. And when you are honest, and this honesty theme that ties through this whole episode is so important, you need to be honest with yourself, because you are the only one who's going to be experiencing your life. You are the only one who's going to feel when you've pushed yourself too far, when you've done everything for everybody else instead of looking after yourself, and when you've lost that balance. You will feel that. Only you will. Other people might be able to feel bad for you. They might have empathy for you. They might not like that you're feeling that way. They might worry for a little while and get over it, but you will be the only one who feels that on the inside. So it is your job, and it is your right to communicate those needs once you've learned more about yourself. And this episode is going to be short and sweet in that way, in the sense that there are so many little tools for boundaries. Some people focus on getting the wording perfect. Some people focus on getting the timing perfect. Some people focus on making sure that it's the right time of the year, or that the other person is not in a good mood, or is in a good mood when you speak to them. I want to tell you that when it comes to boundaries, in my personal experience and from hearing other people, there is no perfect timing. There is just you delaying your happiness, or extending or prolonging your pain, and you will never have the right words. It always comes out a bit fumbled. We don't get to get them perfect. We can practice in the mirror, but there's just sometimes where it's going to come out and it's going to be messy, and that's okay. But the only thing that you do have control of, and that is my only piece of advice in this episode, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to know what you would like in this lifetime, because you cannot communicate and uphold boundaries if you do not know what it is you need. And to know what you need, it means you need a relationship with yourself. It means you need to check in with yourself. It means that you need to know yourself so deeply that if anybody comes and questions it, you don't question yourself as well. You're so strong in yourself. You're so strong in your morals, in your values, what you believe in, and what you know is true for you. And that's what you communicate to the outside world. Because if you live and breathe it from the inside out, people will follow suit. The people who love you will begin to understand you, because you don't falter. You keep that standard for yourself. And I know in the beginning it's difficult. I know that there's times where you really don't want to disappoint someone, but you have let yourself down for so many years that you decide, finally, it is my turn. And I want to remind you that this is not selfish. You are looking after the relationships in your life if you communicate your boundaries, because it means that you, number one, care enough to speak to this person. You want to maintain a relationship, and you are sharing with each other how to do that for the long term. I would be more worried if my friends, my families, any type of coworker was not communicating that to me, because that means and signals to me that they've given up. That means that they don't think that this relationship is worth going into the nitty-gritty for, because it is deeply uncomfortable to speak about these things in the beginning. It's hard work. It's much easier to gloss it over and push it down inside in the short term. But in the long term, you are pushing down some very big, heavy feelings. And it is so important for you to realize that long term, it's not sustainable. You will build up resentment. You will build up frustration and anger and pain and sadness. And guess what? That's going to sit inside your body. you are the one who's going to have to deal with that. And you don't have to. So if in the last while, in the holidays, maybe it's a day-to-day thing, maybe you live with someone, maybe your roommate, maybe your partner, maybe your friends, whatever it may be, a colleague at work, whatever you've experienced in the last month, I want you to really reflect on what it is you need for the coming future. All this episode is highlighting is that you deserve to be loved in the way that feels right to you. We all need to come at it with a bit of flexibility and working around with each other because other people have different needs, but you will find that common ground if you just speak. And you can only speak when you know yourself and you are honest with yourself. When you're honest with yourself, you can then be honest with other people. So very short and sweet. Boundaries are not easy, but developing a relationship with yourself, knowing yourself and being unwavering within your being is something that I know every single one of us can do. So I hope that this episode brings you a little bit of perspective, and going into this new year, bringing that calm into your everyday, bringing that honesty into your everyday. And I hope and wish for everybody that their relationships really curate this open honesty and connection. One little thing I want to add in the end is don't expect immediate results when it comes to boundaries. You need to be practicing patience. That's why these things happen in our life as well. There's a reason why we have boundaries and why we are pushed to communicate them, because we're going to learn skills from it. You're going to learn to be patient, and you're going to learn how to rephrase and be flexible and sit with someone and see what your negotiables are and what your non-negotiables are. So I wish you a beautiful lesson in this, because it truly does develop such beautiful character skills. And remember that the light that you are constantly seeking outside of yourself is just waiting to be acknowledged within. Wishing you a beautiful day. I'll see you all next week. Bye.